Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. You're on BookTube, and this is a great day because we have a fabulous guest with us here. This is Denny S. Bryce. Hello, Denny.
Hello, everybody.
Yes. And she's here today for a Patreon book chat. And just to explain what that is, I have a Patreon where I have a book club every 1 month and a book chat every other month. So today we're not reading a book, we're talking with an author, and that is Denny Bryce today. So I'll just read her lovely intro here. She is an author of historical and women's fiction. She's a public relations professional and has spent more than 20 years running her marketing and public relations firm. For nearly 10 of those years, she wrote and read Buffy Spike fan fiction.
Oh, yes.
Before fan fiction and her days as a PR diva, the graduate of Barat College at DePaul University was a professional dancer, part-time singer, and bad actress. You'll have to tell us what that's about.
Yeah.
During college, she minored in history, but her love of 20th century American history, 19th century British history, and Africa, she credits to her maternal grandmother, Ella Elizabeth Joseph, who immigrated from Montego Bay, Jamaica, and her father, Lester Collingwood, born and raised in Bermuda, who came to America to attend Wilberforce University in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of great points to touch on here, points of contact with history and family stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah.
first, how are you doing today?
I am doing rather fabulous. I have a lot of friends who are on the north part of the country. I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and it is a bright, sunny, a little chilly day. I think the high today is 60 degrees or something like that. But so many of my friends are up to their knees in snow. So I want everyone out there who's dealing with that, big thing that has come through to stay safe and warm. So I'm feeling very fortunate not to have to deal with snow, I'm telling you. Other than that, busy writing, doing the writing thing. You mentioned that I am an author. Oh my goodness. I should say that my debut novel came out last year, March 30th, 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, Wild Women in the Blues. You'll see here's the actual book cover.
Yay!
But
Yep.
the poster, I think, might be visible. I'm not sure. And then I'm working to release this book, which won't be out officially. This is an ARC. Won't be out until April 26, 2022. Okay. So it's after a number of years spent in the publishing world, if you will. I did a lot of volunteer work. I was heavily involved in the romance landia for a while, even though I don't write romance. So I always knew that eventually I'd get to this career path, and because I have had several career paths, and I'm very excited that things are going well. Writing is inspiring. It's fun. It's also isolating.
Yeah, that's why we're here, and that's why on YouTube we try to make the best of our community. So
so it's like, people, I'm so glad you're there.
right, people. Let me touch you.
All the people I know are right in here.
Right.
But,
yeah. Often happens that way. So I've popped up. We can point. Oh, see, I did it wrong. Oh, there we go. In the base of the sun. Yes.
The opposite. Well, I can go either way because I have the poster.
Right. You got both. So you're covered.
Yeah.
Anita is here, and Anita says more over the knees in snow here. She's over in Nova Scotia, so she's a little further north, getting a little bit more bite of that cold air.
Yeah. I was trying to be nice because I've seen a lot of photos of some serious snow, and it's scary. It's very scary.
So I teased this in one of my tweets, this like Buffy Spike fan fiction. Can we get that out of the way first, like the quirky facts?
Oh,
How does
sure,
that
sure.
fit in with all the
Oh, that was not just quirky. That was a serious time of writing that I loved. I loved writing fan fiction,
Mhm.
and especially in that particular genre. I mean, that show just at the time it was in its height. I actually didn't start writing when it came out. I discovered Buffy the Vampire Slayer years after the year it stopped, its last
Okay.
season,
Mhm.
2007? I
They
think it
made a
was something
doctor?
like that.
Yeah.
So I discovered the show. I was like, fell in love with the dialogue. The mythology really grabbed my attention. Have always been a paranormal fan. But the mythology, the writing was clever. It felt fresh, and so just dove into the show. And then there was the online communities that were just always chatting, always talking about, well, this episode did this and this did that. And then I found the fiction, and then I started writing it. One of my how that led me to Romance Landia is that one of the fan fiction writers was a member of RWA. In fact, she was a
Oh,
former president of RWA. Lots of folks in romance back in that time period were definitely, and even today for that matter, dabbled in fan fiction. So many of the fan fiction storylines were, romance focused, or at least were inspired by an online, a
yeah,
story romance.
yeah. No, that's how I learned about the word shipping and the abbreviation OTP. I mean, that's a
Oh,
whole
the
world, and
one
I'm only
true
like dips and
pairing, that one true pairing, you have it in your head and you can't let it go. And now shipping has a lot of different connotations, because back when I was writing fan fiction, there wasn't a Wattpad, for example, and we didn't do real people fanfic, because and that's very normal right now, because you go back to One Direction,
yeah.
um, and what was Ann Tyler's? I believe is the author who started on Wattpad and ended up with a major deal. Todd, her name is Ann Todd. Excuse me.
Oh, okay.
Major deal with one of the top 5 publishing houses, and
Oh,
did a whole series that was, and her work on Wattpad was totally One Direction, Harry Styles, inspired.
yeah.
But yeah, so my fan fiction days definitely led me to write. And I had a website, whole thing, went to conferences, fan fiction conferences,
But
met
this
all
is
the
the same
actors.
this is the same time you were building your PR firm, right? I think it's
Yeah, it was my vacation. I would take because I was very busy with my PR firm, so for my vacation time, once I finished my big show, I'd take off and go do writing conferences, go attend RWA
Mhm.
events at the time, whatever, just travel around, and had the opportunity to meet up with some writers from RWA that I met there. And so it was, but I was only a writer like for 3 months a year. The rest of the time I was working with running my business.
Yeah,
Um, but
really
that, well, you make choices. And at that time, I loved to write, but I loved my business too. So that's what I did. And then I guess, oh, when was it? I think around 2016, or maybe earlier, maybe even 2014, I decided that I needed to slow down the business and devote some more time to writing. And
Mhm.
that's the year I submitted a romantic suspense to an RWA event called the Golden Heart, and I won in that category. So yeah, that was pretty definitely an highlight of that stage of my
Mhm.
writing journey. And I went, and it changed my attitude toward my writing.
Mhm.
I got really wanted to do it better, and so added craft. I'm a craft junkie anyway, but I really got involved in craft classes and trying to spend more time. And I cut back on my work at
Mm.
um, at the PR firm, and eventually stopped doing the company.
Mhm.
Well, the pandemic helped because you can't have an event
Oh,
in the city
yeah. Exactly, exactly.
during the pandemic. So there was that. But yeah, so that's sort of life story connecting the dots from
Yeah,
fan fiction to
that's
where I
fantastic.
am today. There's a little some other holes in there, but yeah, that's
But
pretty
yeah,
much
there's one more piece, and that's the next one I'm gonna ask you about. So you've got, quote from your website, historical fiction author, book critic, professor, freelance writer. So I know they're not all overlaid together, but they're definitely like a quilt sort of weaving back and forth.
yeah, it's definitely connected. I started writing for USA Today when I was still doing running my company, but I was writing for the Happy Ever After column that used to appear in USA Today, and had an opportunity that helped me meet a lot of authors writing for that for that thing. And then I got some opportunities to do some book reviews and some articles, and so now I am an NPR book critic. That is a wonderful experience to work with the people there. A recent tragedy has made it a little bit sadder because the editor, um, Petra Mayer, passed away suddenly about a couple of months ago. But it's been a wonderful experience to have the opportunity to uh, write book reviews and learn from writing book reviews, and also um, I'm the type of reviewer who really wants to um, elevate or promote good books. So that was my missions, and I was very excited to have the opportunity to do that, and will be continuing to do that. Um, it's I just don't. I do a couple of books a quarter. I don't really do a whole bunch because
Yeah.
I got books to write.
Right, right. Yeah, that was one of my questions is how do you weave in doing book reviews along with being an author, both professionally, because you know you're going to be talking about your peers sometimes, but also
Well, there are, one
schedule
thing
wise.
about NPRs, they have rules and regs
Mm,
regarding who I can review from who I can't. I can't review, for my imprint at,
got it.
so I can't review, Kensington books, but, because they don't have the same kind of imprint strategy there, I don't think. But I can't review William Morrow books because, I'm contracted with William Morrow as well.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's good. Lines
Yeah, yeah.
boundaries. That's good.
It's fair. It's totally, appropriate, to have those kind of things, out there because you want to have and I get assigned, the books that I review, or at least we have a conversation about them. And so that's exciting that it's a really well-structured, well-run, um, team over there.
And what would you say to people who are on BookTube starting their like reading channels and reading books and reviewing and practicing that skill, but like not knowing how like the business side works? Because I can only think of two people. Steve Donahue, I think, has his own business and has come onto YouTube after, and a book olive started on YouTube and now has gone sort of professional book reviewer. But beyond that, it's just we're all
Yeah,
amateurs.
I think that, I more and more people many book critics are authors, and that is because it it's an in when you're reading a book and you, know about structure or, um, character arcs and theme, utilization of theme and how that connects story. Those are elements that readers enjoy when they're reading a book review. Um, sure, they want to get a book description, but they also want to have insight, at least from the perspective of the book critic, as to what this story? What is the meaning of the story? What are the themes that this book explores? How do these characters really help deliver on the primary message or genre that
Mm.
that book is all about? So that part of it, I really enjoy because, as I said, craft junkie.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so, peeling the onion apart in terms of, oh, this is how this character began, and this is the growth, and and the other thing is, without giving away the story.
Yeah. Important.
There's that. So picking and choosing what to share that adds to the potential reader interest is also something that is a part of the book review process.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you want the author being a book critic makes sense because, like, if you're going to trust someone's advice on wine, for example, they've got to drink a lot of wine and know what they like and know the field, right? I don't drink wine. So I would be a terrible wine critic
Yes, what a fun job.
for me.
Yes.
Chandra's here. She said, "Yeah, that would be interesting to be a book critic. Very cool." I'm going to
Yes.
save Chandra's question for more towards the end. Anita's
Okay.
saying, "My book blog started out as a review site, had to stop reviewing though." Anita is a prolific author, so she's probably focusing more on the writing side
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so now here's a community question. Looking back on the friends you've made in all these different roles in the publishing industry and different communities you've stepped in, how do you keep in touch and support each other? How is that glue held over time? Because, yeah, that's
Oh, it's
my thoughts.
I'll tell you, to me, and in the community of writers that I interact with, it's held together for a long time. I really got started with a collective, if you will, many years ago. We were called the Waterworld Mermaids. And the Waterworld Mermaids were a group of um, unpublished authors who attended Washington Romance Writers retreat. And we were all first timers. So a gal by the name of Aletha Contis said, let's form a group. And so we did. And she came up with the name Waterworld Mermaids. And there was about, I think in the beginning, there was about 12 of us. And we had a blast. Initially.
Mhm.
And then over time, things changed, people got published, but that cohesiveness, that idea of teamwork and someone to talk to as you're going through the process, it sort of became a part of our makeup. And so I still have a very close connection to my 2014 Golden Heart class, the Dream Weavers. We talk every day online. I mean, it's a group of us who are more active than some of the others, but still, nonetheless, there's that. Um, I also like to call myself a joiner. I like to join things. And
Definitely.
it's
Like
like,
a mighty blaze, your example.
you know, but now some groups I've backed away from, of course, but I'm a member of the Historical Novel Society, fabulous events and interaction with that group. I recently was invited to join Tall Poppies and the Tall Poppy Writers, and that's it's more of a marketing collective, but also a band of authors who interact and share information and all that good stuff. I was a member of the debut 2021. Well, I was also a member of the debut 2020 Facebook group, but
Oh, because it's changed for Wild Women in the Blue Sky.
moved. So I ended up in the 2021 group. But again, authors supporting authors is a part of what I feel is so useful and so helpful when you have such a crowded marketplace. Some people will sit back up. You also mentioned that I'm a professor. I just started as a adjunct professor at Drexel University. And
Oh, wow, cool.
yeah,
Very
I,
exciting.
I teach marketing for authors.
Uh-huh.
And some of the things that I emphasize, authors in this day and age, whether you're indie published or traditionally published, you're running your own business. And sometimes that can be a jarring statement for authors to
Yeah.
face.
To
Um,
internalize. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's like, oh, now I have to do this. Well, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
If you're going to be competitive, if you want to have a position in the marketplace, you want people reading your books, you have to tell them about your books, and you have to share the telling them about your books with a publisher, with a publicist, with whatever team you pull together. And
Mhm.
again, traditional whether you're traditionally published or you are an indie published author, that is a part of what running a business in the author realm that exists today um, requires.
Yeah.
And I just, I'm not one of those instructors who will say, well, maybe it's not for you. I'm like, marketing is marketing. It's just a part of life
Yeah.
when it comes to, and you can pick and choose with a good plan what works best for you. But to say, I don't want to do it, no, well, there's a price to pay for not doing
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah.
Some levels of participation in the marketing front is a requirement these days.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and you said so authors helping authors to market books after publication is because the marketplace is crowded. But I feel like it's also almost like a mental health thing because, as
Oh,
you said
absolutely.
earlier, it's so lonely doing the writing before publication that you really want someone to band up with beforehand to keep you going.
Absolutely, and there's also so many different aspects of publishing that, you sign the contract or you get the agent, if you're going traditional, and I have to speak to traditional because I'm not an indie published author, but, those steps are preliminary too. Once you write the book, once it's handed in, the production schedule, the line edit versus the copy edit versus the galley proof, versus getting all of those things done and being responsive to publicists' needs,
Mm-hmm.
um, etc. And then you're working on the other book, and you might be writing a proposal for something else. So it's a matter of organization. It's a matter of I must admit I'm a full-time writer right now. And part of that is because of the pandemic, but
Yeah.
also, if I'm in that um, place in my writing journey, even if you're not in that place in your writing journey, you still have to manage your time. You still have to manage your mental health, which is getting the right amount of rest, which is not drinking a bottle of wine with every chapter. Uh,
Oh, come
there are
on.
things,
People are gonna be very disappointed by that. That's a reward
right?
system.
You gotta be careful. But so there's a thought process that has to be a part of this business that is separate from being creative, and sometimes that's a butting of the left and right side of the brain that some people just
Yeah.
have a different capacity for, if you will. And I I I have to be careful because I sometimes enjoy, or I shouldn't say enjoy, I'm more accustomed because I've spent more years doing it,
Yeah.
with my business brain going. So making sure that I'm really devoting the creative part of me, and creativity in writing, um, is where and how to incorporate, at least recently for me, is the emotional context, is where's the passion in the characters. I was talking, just had a recent event that I was doing, or conversation, a virtual event. And we were talking about how the pandemic impacted creativity and or mood or what have you, because it really you know, changed the drama of the changed environment and
Yeah,
not being on a regular interactive
right.
place with people um, does have an impact. So I was saying that I felt the isolation more so in shutting down on certain levels of emotion.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I rediscovered to help me with my emotional connections was to get back into music. And I'm a music lover, but I was stuck in the 1990s. Let me say, let me explain how stuck.
Okay.
Well, I go all the way, I love classical music and stuff like that. That comes from my dancer background because, that's just going back in the day,
Right.
many days ago. I was taking ballet classes and you'd have all of the Stravinskys and
Sure.
this, that, and the other. And, that was your class music. And then you just exposed to different types of music. So I got back into music. I really got back into jazz when I was writing Wild Women and the Blues, but more of the classic early jazz.
Mm.
So and now I'm really excited about 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s jazz. And the other area I love is K-pop, which is a brand new. I mean, but people don't understand. You listen to K-pop and you're getting a mix of 90s hip hop, R&B. They touch upon all of these.
It's like the best of all the worlds.
Yeah, and they bring them together and then they recraft them for the popular music that they create out of South Korea primarily. I don't
Right.
like calling it K-pop, frankly, but it's popular music, period.
Got it. Yeah,
But
of course. Wow. Okay. Well, I did not know that about you, Denny. So that's an exciting fact to learn. Um,
mm,
I'm just gonna stop. So we're like halfway through to ask people to like, comment, subscribe, and share because I always forget to do that. And someone in the chat usually reminds me. So I'm just reminding myself this time. And just to give a little bit of the preview of upcoming attractions, if you're here, there's one more day to sign up for our Black Author Tuber Readathon. This is something that we're doing in February because there's, of course, all sorts of readathons going, but we have AuthorTube community, and we're going to support hone in on our tiny little ways we can support Black AuthorTubers and read some of their books. So I will pop that in the chat. It's basically just put your name next to a book that you'd like to read, buy and read it in February. And if you find a buddy to read it with, even better, because then you get to discuss, and that just enriches every book reading experience that I have had. So I'll pop
yeah.
that in the chat. And K-pop, you heard it here. Okay, so my next round of questions is a little bit going back in history to ask
Okay.
about historical research, because
Yeah.
your book Wild Woman and the Blues is the first one I did a single book review on, and I did it live. So it's a
Wow.
little awkward, but it was that good. It was going to be my first one. I was so excited about it.
Oh, wow.
How was it having your debut novel launch during the parallelogram, as we're saying online these days? How was that? And more like granular, what hurt about it? What did you miss out on? And what helped, or what new opportunities came up that you wouldn't have had otherwise?
Well, I've been asked that question before, and I have an answer that some people might be surprised by. The pandemic helped my book sell because of virtual events that were national and international availability,
Mhm.
and the once publishers and independent bookstores in particular. It was also a fabulous time to get out there with and have form more relationships with independent bookstores as a debut author. I did more than 50 events virtually that I would never have been able to do market by market in store or
Mhm.
anything like that. Of course, connection with readers would be great, but I even did book club events on FaceTime
Yeah.
and, in addition to Zoom. So there were so many opportunities to connect with readers, to connect with booksellers, to
Mm.
connect with librarians and libraries, that expanded the reach. Now, what's happening moving forward is that we're going to see a new model in terms of how books are marketed launch-wise, and we're going to have the in-store events, but the virtual events aren't going away because there's an opportunity on both sides to have more authors from across the landscape
Mhm.
in events. I've done bookstores where they literally are open, but they have a big screen. So
Oh,
that
okay.
people,
There you go.
can interact with the author.
Mhm.
So that was an interesting takeaway that I don't think we thought about that much until we were in the thick of it.
Mhm.
And so that escalated time and experience and all of those good things. There are a lot of people out here, a lot of authors who are now doing a fabulous job on TikTok, doing a fabulous job on Reels because they've been on screen in front of Zoom talking to people so much. They're like, oh, just show me a camera and I'll make it happen. So there's
Vanessa
that.
Riley are awesome. Sarah DeVello and Vanessa Riley are like my two top for TikTok and Reels. I just like they make me laugh.
Well, and finding your footing in those arenas is also something that is very personal for the individual authors. Um, I have a TikTok account and I do some things, but I'm not highly skilled at it yet. I mess
It's
around.
fiddly. It's definitely fiddly.
Well, it's a different type of marketing strategy because and the same thing happens with the reels on Instagram. There's more readers and just part people who watch on Instagram or who just a part of the audience. They
Mhm.
want a different type of interaction that involves more visual interaction. They want to see who's telling me whatever they have to say.
Mhm.
And the pretty picture that used to be so much a stronghold on Instagram is still there, but the reels are really another vehicle that they use, another element at Instagram that are getting more and more popular because they compare to what TikTok is doing. And
Yeah.
TikTok is now the number one. A year ago, it was Instagram was the
Mm.
number one. But who's going to be next year? I don't know.
Those meddling kids,
Well,
right?
the youth market started well, the youth market got the attention
Yeah.
with TikTok, but if you look at TikTok, it right now, it's all over the place. It's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's not a kids only, but but it's according to who you follow. It's
Right.
according to how
It's
you create your connection,
mhm.
and that's who you'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting when people say, "I help, I've become stranded in this corner," but it's like a virtual corner because you're basically creating your own silo by what you like and comment on.
Absolutely.
It's
Those
very
algorithms make you crazy. But,
yeah.
that's why I'm still at this place where when Twitter asks you to, set up your ads that you want to see and what you don't wanna see, I
Oh, I haven't done that yet.
I brush it off. I still haven't done it, and it's been
Yeah.
coming up for, like, a year. It's like, "I'm not gonna tell you. You'll just have
Really?
to guess."
I didn't I don't have that come up. I'll and I check Twitter every day, so that's interesting.
Well, I don't know what's wrong. It's me. They're after me.
They're after your info, yeah, highly prized. So Sydney's here. Hey there, been watching this whole time, but finally sat down to the laptop to log in correctly. Love story for this. Congrats on the new book, Denny. Awesome.
Thank you.
Bree of Locked Booktition. Yeah, interesting. Have the Wild Woman in the Blues on her TBR. Awesome.
Yay.
I hope you love it.
I do
And
too.
Anita saying Instagram is pushing the reels over pictures, which helps their popularity. Yep, they're
Yeah,
struggling. They're behind now.
I know. Yeah, I remember, I think it's been about 6 months since their CEO made the announcement that they were changing their algorithms and pushing reels.
Oh,
And that's great, I'm adjusting to it,
mhm,
sorta, because I like pictures.
nice. All right. So if anyone's just been joining us, I'm here with Denny S. Bryce, historical and women fictions author. This is the book that's coming out, the one that you can see behind her with the brilliant blues and yellow. This is In the Face of the Sun, coming out on April 26th. So we were just talking about debuting, and what are you looking forward to most to launching launching In the Face of the Sun in April? What's going to be different, or what's
Oh gosh. Well, we're talking about doing some in-store events in addition to virtual. So I'll know more in another week or two where and what cities at least we're targeting,
Mhm.
but some travel will be involved. That'll be exciting. And it's still a situation of looking to see how things evolve, whether or not there will be festivals to participate in and or conferences.
Mhm.
I am scheduled to participate in a Polycon, which is actually primarily a romance event
Okay.
that is spearheaded or owned, if you will, by Jennifer L. Armitrott. And
Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool. I've definitely
yes,
heard of her on Book Talk and BookTube for sure.
everywhere. And she does a she's done this event for years. She had to skip the last 2 years, of course, but now it happens in the DC area. And I think, again, the dates are on my website under events. And what else is coming? I think we talked about next weekend. I'm doing a couple of panels on February 5th with the History Quill Conference, Writers Conference, and details of that. It's a 4 or 5 day conference, and there's a lot going on. So again, I have the link to that for registration and what have you on my website.
There you go, right?
Yay! And oddly enough, in 20, and I don't know why I said oddly, but funny, I am slated to be in what they call rare event in Melbourne, Australia in 2023.
What is that? Rare.
It's a huge reader event that
Okay.
takes place around the country. Again, it's romance focused, and sometimes I get involved in romance focused events. There's a love story. You're always going to find some sort of love story in whatever I write. It and the reason I differentiate between love story and romance, of course, is structurally. We all know that a good romance is going to give you a hero and a heroine, or two heroines or two heroes, and they're going to go through an arc that has a happy ever after. A love story does not have the same structure. It may be more like romantic elements.
Right.
Sometimes love stories don't always end with the happy ever after. That is the goal and purpose of a good romance.
Right.
So, there's that difference. But when I was doing some articles back in the day for RWA, like I learned that people like, oh gosh, Christian Hanna, she was with RWA and a romance writer back in the 90s. And who else well, of course, many people know that Kate Quinn and Stephanie Dre and Laura Camoni, also known as Laura Kay, and the reason these names are so readily off my tip of my tongue is that they were all used to live in the Maryland, DC area, and we were all members of the Maryland Romance Writers back in the day.
Got it.
So this is going back a few years, but
Yeah. Bringing
um,
back in that writer community. That's super.
yeah, yeah. So the writer community that continues, all of those names, except for maybe Kate, were blurbers for Wild Women in the Blues.
Nice.
Just connections and people who were willing to say, "Hey," well, would go out and say, "Please."
Yeah, right. Predicate that with it.
Reading
Yeah,
it,
all
and
the
if you
time.
like it, if you could blurb it, I'd love it.
But if
Um,
you never ask, you never get a yes. So there's
you never know, and now
both.
I've learned that on this book, on the second book, we're not seeking as many blurbs, but my editor does that, and or my because now I get to blurb books now. I get
Yeah,
people
yeah.
reaching out to me,
Tables of
which
turns.
is so flattering and is so exciting.
Nice.
But I get to read great books early,
Yeah.
and that's fun. Well, I wish I was a faster reader. That is one thing I really wish I was a faster reader, but I'm not a fast reader. But I still, I read. I just, gotta.
So one thing I've noticed, having only read one, because only one of these books is out yet, is that
Mhm.
they're both dual timeline. So
Oh,
what
yeah.
is it about dual timeline? Because I'm very interested in this. I'm a huge fan of Susanna Kearsley, and she does the double
Yes,
timeline romance.
yes,
I love
yes.
that.
She blurbed my book too, and one of the events I'm doing next weekend is she's on the panel. By the way.
Yay! Okay, so what is it that's most appealing about that? Like, what does that bring out for you?
Oh gosh, I really love reading dual timelines,
Mm,
and what the thing that stands out is that it's an opportunity to incorporate and sustain mystery and tension, because right off the bat, you're saying here are two different. Well, I do dual, not just dual storylines. In both of the books that are coming out, I'm doing a dual timeline. So I have a past and present. And then so connecting those two stories is an opportunity to keep the reader hopefully invested even more in how's this going to come together? How's
mhm,
this going to work itself out? How are these people connected? And you can do that, and that's what I strive to accomplish in Wild Women in the Blues. There's a similar, there's a dual timeline in The Face of the Sun as well. It's definitely a different type of story. It's 1928 and 1968. The 1968 story begins in Chicago and ends in Los Angeles because there's a road trip on Route 66. And then in 1928, there's a hotel, the Hotel Somerville, which was the first hotel built in Los Angeles,
mhm.
luxury hotel, let me emphasize, for African Americans. And the importance of that is that African Americans couldn't stay at the other hotels. They weren't allowed to check into the Beverly Hilton or all of the fancier hotels, but there was work in Los Angeles at the time because that was the beginning of the boom of Hollywood.
Right.
Talkie, I think the first talkie was Steam came out in 27 or 26. I mean, it was right around the same time period. And then you had things explode with the
Right.
talkie
Right.
thing, and that gave way to something else that happened with musicians did shorts. African American musicians and singers. There were a lot of film shorts,
Hmm.
and then other things.
Almost like reels.
Almost like reels, except really weird. But there were
Yeah.
other things. There were
Yeah.
other things. Black Hollywood was an interesting journey to this day.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely some great opportunities happening in this day and age. But back in the 1920s, it was a mixed message, a mixed bag, if you will.
And
A
you worked in a little bit of the Black Hollywood that was going on in Chicago in the 1920s, which I loved, which is so fascinating. So I want to ask a question about researching Chicago. What was your initial experience or knowledge of the city, and what were your favorite resources that you discovered, or most surprising resources that you discovered?
Well, I lived in Chicago for 20 years, and also, when I think I always like to touch Chicago when I'm writing something in some kind of way, I must admit. But, the most, fascinating thing that I really discovered was working with an archivist at the Harold Washington Library in Chicago. And,
Oh,
she was just amazing, and I can't remember her name because I didn't know it was gonna be that important, but I kept going back to her, and she was so helpful. But, some of the characters, some of the things that she introduced me to or, the research options that were so rich, I just found stuff.
Yeah.
And she directed me to not just the music scene, but to really recreate the atmosphere of that time period, having a strong understanding of how people lived,
Mhm.
how the communities were divided, and how the African American experience, because this is also during the migration years, post World War One, that had an impact and influence. Because Wild Women in the Blues, in the back end, in the backstory, as I call it, was set in 1925. So, a few years after the end of World War One, a few years after the end of that pandemic, a few years into the Roaring Twenties,
Right.
and the Roaring Twenties are offer different experiences for different people. I mean, so often the takeaway from the Roaring Twenties is almost, anything that has to do with, oh my gosh, why can't I remember the name of the movie right now and the book? Um,
Gatsby?
Gatsby.
Yeah.
Everything is Gatsby.
Yeah.
And guess what? Everything wasn't Gatsby. There were
Right.
actually other people of color,
Mhm.
women who did things differently from what was happening in that particular story. Fabulous story. I'm not, saying anything about that. But I am saying that there are many other stories to be told, that the opportunity in the publishing marketplace is now supporting. The
Mhm.
stories have been told, or people have been trying to tell. African Americans, other people, authors of color, have been trying to tell their stories for years, decades, centuries. But now there is a more support, and I think an enlightened environment to a certain extent for that these stories are a part of the American and or international story mix. So it's not a trend. It's an addition and expansion upon a foundation that needed to grow.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think as the people who look like me get less insecure about having those stories told and stronger and able to handle those stories and like the other points of view, then that is what is gonna like open it up more and more and more. And
Yeah.
I love it.
And the more that's in the marketplace, the more that will happen.
Mhm. Positive feedback,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you've got 1968. That's a new era for this In the Face of the Sun book. Is there a certain driving choice between your selection of eras? Because you've got the 20s and
It
before.
was deliberate. It was definitely deliberate because the 1928 storyline includes W.E.B. Du Bois, who, as you know, one of the great African American leaders of his time, NAACP founder or co-founder, and this hotel, a week after it opened in 1928, was also the location for the first NAACP annual meeting on the West Coast. So you had that element coming into the mix. And then you look at 1968, 40 years later, and you might ask the question what had changed on the civil rights uh,
Right.
movement,
Yeah.
and what had changed in America. What were the degrees of change?
Mhm.
Now, my story has all of this as a backdrop, if you will, but my story is about the people who are in whatever situation that they're in. I have in 1968 a young woman who is escaping, looking to get away from an abusive husband, and calls upon her aunt
Mhm.
um, to help. Eventually calls upon her aunt to help. And in 1928, that aunt is a young woman looking to take care of her family, be supportive, but also to have some things of her own.
Mm.
So, it was fun looking at those two timelines. It was also, there's some moments of what I felt was heartbreaking about the two timelines. You know,
Right.
so
And Bree was mentioning the connection, if done well, is magical. Wild Women and the Blues connection between the two timelines is magical, so you definitely have to read it. It's like,
yeah, I can't really talk about that one.
there's a twist. You like
Yeah,
that twist.
there's a twist. But
But
it was, but again, it grew out of something I wanted to talk about because the young man who is the POV or point of view character in the present day story, which was 2015, he has some emotional issues that he was addressing, and I wanted to put that um, out there with this particular young male character, this black male character who, um, you know, had a lot of positive things going on, but he also had some things that weren't as positive. And so putting him in that situation where he wanted to be successful, he was striving to be successful, but had all of this weight on his heart and on his mind. So I wanted to tell that story. And then the dancer in 1925, Honore, I just felt an affinity toward her. And it was just fun writing her and challenging because she was independent. She's quite the independent minded person. And that was fun. It was fun writing it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Background research. My last question here before we go to any audience questions is about the backstory that you mentioned and the Great Migration. So I
Yeah.
just started. So here's the current read. Sego,
Wow.
West African classic.
Yeah.
This is the one I just picked up yesterday.
Yeah.
Finally to start reading.
Yeah,
But The Warmth of Other Suns I read a couple years ago now, and that gives a great sort of backdrop to the 20s, 30s, and 40s migration of African Americans from the South to other places where they might have more economic opportunity and freedom from violence. So was there a germinating seed for addressing that in the way you did in the two books that you have so far?
Oh, let me see. I'd say that it was just a fact of life that people who wanted to escape Jim Crow left where they went. I did a little bit of a twist on it in Wild Women in the Blues, though, because the people, the family, the Dalcour family, migrated from New Orleans. But there's a twist in the story that I won't share. And so for some people that worked. I'll put it that way. For some other people, it may not have worked. It wasn't an easy journey. It wasn't something that everyone could do. Many people did do it. I mean, that's how you had this huge population growth. And that also impacted the economy of the different cities, especially the Chicagos, Detroits, New York, St. Louis, the bigger metropolitan areas. So my research items, my archival items were definitely more so about the economics of Chicago in the 1920s. One of the books that's over there, it's called The New Negro. And it really explored the mindset of change that the African American community was experiencing from the days of, the mindset of W.E.B. Du Bois versus, now you're making me remember things. But
who is the person that he's always set up next to? Is it something the third?
Yes, and I mentioned him in the course over and over again.
Does it begin with an L? No.
It's embarrassing. Somebody help me. Help. I mentioned him in the second chapter. I know where I mentioned him.
Washington.
Yes, thank you.
I just had to Google it and autofill.
Yeah, his first name, please, is Booker T. Washington.
There you go.
Boy, oh boy. Anyway. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So we have that as a part of that was my my initial thing was to really explore the economy of the situation of the city, how people made money, where people lived, the geography as much as possible. The second thing was the wonderful archives at the Library of Congress that provided me with access to the Chicago Defender.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yes, yes,
Chicago
yes.
Defender is the oldest African American newspaper in the country. Their archives are amazing. And in fact, the African American newspapers across the board are a resource for, at least for me working 20th century African American history in particular, that I really enjoy and that are really useful. Um, Louis Armstrong's biography, Oscar Michaud's biography. I was I went down a couple of rabbit holes, which is typical for historical fiction research, but in
I don't know what you're talking about.
just getting lost on something you'll never use. I spent hours working on a scene just because I found this really great information on an authentic um, um, record shop that was in Chicago on a certain corner that had this amazing history, amazing layout for what they sold, and blah, blah, blah. That scene didn't work for anything.
Ah.
Nothing.
Cutting room floor gold, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? If I can find it in my files, because sometimes you throw the files away because you're just like, you really, I may have to send it to my newsletter.
There
People,
you go. There you go.
this
Sign up for the
is
newsletter.
that I wrote that just didn't work. It just
Yeah.
didn't work. So, so that's what the rabbit hole can do for you. In the story that I'm working on now, I'm actually working on two stories now. I am really trying to do a better job of drafting on my first draft, getting the story down, and then making notes about what history I have to add. And that's really helping me.
Mhm.
I'm going to keep going that path because I'm feeling less. Well, the first step in the proposal synopsis phase is definitely to get your goal.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. It's your goalpost. Like, what is the history you can't mess with?
Right,
Okay.
right.
you know,
What do you not wanna get called out for after the book is out and people are like, "But
Queen, right? Queen Victoria took office when? Queen when?
1837,
Yes, and when did she die? 1901?
1901."
Yes. So you have to have this. You can't move her thing around.
Yeah.
And because she's definitely an important figure in historical figure in the next book I'm working on. Um,
Ooh, exciting.
yes, yes. It's called The Other Princess. I think I mentioned it's a story of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, who was an African princess who was captured by slave traders and then saved and gifted to the Queen of England at the time, who was Queen Victoria. So she became she had a amazingly interesting life, and I'm that's going to be my first biographical historical fiction.
Oh,
Yeah. So
sorry. I
that's
put something
all.
else about her and it did something weird with the window, so hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Alright, pleasing.
Yeah, that one is we don't have any dates or anything. I'm currently writing that book, but the research has been amazing.
Nice,
It's
nice. That's
been
very cool.
amazing. Well, my family history, my ancestral history. Yes, Sarah with an H. Well, you know what? What's
Oh, I just looked it
interesting?
up. I just looked it up. And that's
Well,
what
well, I was about to correct myself because sometimes it's with an H, sometimes it's without,
Okay.
and I'm going to use the H because that's the way it appears in some of her letters.
Okay.
I have letters that she wrote, but historians will spell it both ways.
Yeah.
And
You
that's
have it all in your author's note, right?
please. That author's note for sometimes could be longer than a book. You know, but,
Could be, yeah.
yeah,
We love it. We love it.
it's a lot of history.
All right, so we're at the hour mark. So I'm
Okay.
going to give you a rapid 6-question rapid fire questions.
I can do it.
Yep. Our Chandra here's question was, what is the most important skill for a book reviewer?
Honesty. You have to be honest with and believe what you're writing. That will help the story. That will help the review, you know, because you're passionate about your opinion, but you're honest with it.
All right. Another rapid question. How do you start your day?
I start my day with a group of writers online at 8 a.m. sharp every Monday through Friday for a 2-hour writing sprint.
Is it a Zoom thing or
Yeah.
Slack thing? Okay, awesome. That sounds like a good plan. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Maui.
Maui, nice, good answer. Aloha.
Maui. I've been to Maui, I think 2 or 3 times. There's a banyan tree inn up in the mountains that overlooks the ocean. I would live there.
Nice.
I love
We have a booktuber, Marilyn Maya Mendoza, who lives in Hawaii, and she gives a little vlog peeps every once in a while, which are glorious. What about your most memorable dance performance, whether as a performer or an audience member?
Oh, interesting question. My most memorable dance performance was at the Goodman Theater in Chicago years ago, and I really loved that performance. I was dancing with the Joseph Holmes Dance Theater at the time. So that one was special. The other one was my taking class I took in New York when I was dancing in New York. On Sunday mornings, there was a jazz class uptown. And
Sounds good already.
it was a great jazz class, but one of the other people in the class was Madonna.
Oh my God.
Showing my age here a little bit, but yeah.
That's so cool. Wow.
That's another dancer, but you know, just
Yeah.
hanging out. But we worked. I also worked with Twyla Tharp and
Amazing.
you know, just peoples.
Her
out
book is
there.
so good, by the way. Her creativity.
Yeah,
Loved
yeah,
it.
it is. I also worked with Judith Jamison with the Alvin Ailey Company. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Trot those out. Dust them off. Trot them out. What's your playlist while writing?
Oh, right now it's I won't go backwards. I listen to a lot of Ella Fitzgerald and a lot of I still am listening to the 90s, but I'm also listening
They were
to
a good decade for music. You can't get around.
the 90s was just brilliant.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned to you before, that led me to enjoying one particular South Korean boy band that I listened to.
It's not BTS?
No, yes, it is, but I just
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. BTS. We know that here. Yep.
yeah, it's BTS.
And the last rapid fire question, the wish list writer that you would love to collaborate with for an event or a launch or a celebration of some kind.
You know, that's almost an impossible question to answer because of all of I've done some reviews of books of people that I may never meet, but I hope to. And then there are just authors that I just enjoy interacting with on the regular basis. But you know, I reviewed Colson Whitehead's A Harlem Shuffle, and very different from his other books. I love that.
Oh,
I
good.
would not walk away from an event with him. But at the same time, I love Kate Quinn, Vanessa Riley, Nancy Johnson. Oh my God. I could go on and on with authors. Sarah Penner, Natalie Jenner. I mean, it's boom. There are so
You have
many.
a big tent event with all your best favorite
Well,
friends.
it would be a huge event. It would be because I pull from people I don't know, I do know, but they're because I am always looking at books as a reviewer. I don't review all the books that I get sent to me, unfortunately, because I can't read that fast.
Right.
There's just a wealth of stuff happening out there.
Right. Awesome. So you've got a couple left from Sydney. Was your dual timeline process the same with both books?
No, very different. I went back. Well, let me try and remember with Wild Women in the Blues. I think I tried to write one story and then wrote the other and then merged. With this story, I went back and forth. I went back
Mm,
and forth.
interesting.
And yeah, now we'll see what happens with the next one, but that's a very good question. I felt the story required a different approach because it's a very different story. Um, but I was comfortable going from one time period to the other. In Wild Women in the Blues, it's like I had to write the 1925 story first. I
Mm.
really did.
I can see that. That would be confusing
Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah.
And also, Sydney, do you think dancing has helped you with description of character movement? I'd say
Yes,
yes. Definitely.
absolutely.
I'm
Also,
thinking specifically of that party where you describe the house you walk in, the people where they are, the slipping in between the rooms to like see the people and the
yeah,
politics. Oh, it was so good.
yeah, the movement and there's how people feel standing next to someone or just being in the same air space because that is such when you're dancing like you do a group routine you're thinking about what you're doing but you're also very conscious of the space that you're in and the dancers that are near you because you don't want to collide.
Right.
There's that. And I was never, I only did a few solos. So I was usually with the group,
With people. Yeah. Yeah.
with people trying to survive. So yeah, I use dance quite a bit and also sound. Sound is very important.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're at the end of our hour time, so I'll just do a few wrap up things and say thank you so much, Jenny, for coming
Oh,
on the channel for an interview. Very excited about In the Face of the Sun.
thank
You
you.
had your next event is next weekend with the History Quill Writers Convention. So I'll
Yes.
pop that in the chat for people to look up. I already know that some friends from Paper Lantern Writers have a couple panels on that as well.
Yeah.
So you'll cross paths and say hello.
There's, it's a great lineup. Check out the website.
Yay!
Yeah.
And then for the channel, next events we have are the Black Author Tube Readathon is starting on Tuesday, February 1st. So don't forget to sign up for that. Read a book. There's short ones, long ones, poetry, romance, horror, middle grade. We've got a good range. So all genres can find something to love. Then on Tuesday, I'm going to be having a buddy read discussion of Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield with Katie Reads and Rants. That was a very entertaining read. Sorry, you're getting a tail in the picture there. I don't. And finally, since this is our Patreon book chat and Denny is our Patreon book guest, next month, the book that we're reading is Sisters of the Raven, a sci-fi fantasy by Barbara Hambly, backlist book because we all love to read backlist titles, and that is about women taking power. And so that is going to be an inspiring read too, hopefully.
Oh, definitely. I'm excited because I'm going to have a backlist in a couple of months.
Yay!
Hey, what?
It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Denny. Thank you for
having me.
Yeah, coming on the channel. Thanks everyone for joining and contributing some great questions. Pre-order In the Faces of the Sun coming out on April 26th. Subscribe to the channel and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend.